Welcome to the Focus and Chill podcast, where we discuss productivity tactics that work for neurodivergent individuals.
Every episode, we interview guests with lived experience of neurodiversity who also have a solid productivity and habit game, and pass the learnings on to you, our wise and benevolent audience.
We're your hosts, Jeremy and Joey.
I'm Joey, and I coach creatives to get moving on their most ambitious projects through the power of solid habits and strong focus. I'm also a perpetual student of psychology and perpetually on a quest to a one-armed chin-up.
And I'm Jeremy, a neurospicy software developer turned startup founder, building the Focus Bear app to help people with ADHD and autism thrive at work. My cool party trick is leaving parties early so I can get to sleep in time for my 2-hour-long morning routine. The Focus and Chill podcast is brought to you by Focus Bear, a habit and productivity app that makes healthy habits and deep work the path of least resistance. If you have a tendency to check emails or scroll through Instagram first thing in the morning, but long to develop a meditation and exercise habit first thing, Focus Bear can help you. The app blocks distractions on all your devices and guides you through your habits one at a time. Throughout the day, Focus Bear assists you to stay in deep work by blocking websites and apps that are unrelated to your chosen focus mode. Life's not all about work though. You'll be prompted to take regular breaks to rest your eyes and stretch your muscles. At the end of the day, Focus Bear helps you switch off. Work-related apps get hidden so you can unwind and sleep well. Check out the app by going to focusbear.io. Welcome to episode number 50 of the Focus and Chill podcast. Very special episode, nice milestone, and we're thrilled to be joined by Brent Huras today. And this is actually quite meaningful because we had actually started communicating with Brent about a year ago, and just logistics with time zones made it a bit challenging. So we're really thrilled to be joined by Brent today. Brent is a productivity and flow state coach whose practice evolved from the single purpose of answering the question, how can I get myself to do my work? To this end, he has spent the last 2 decades reading, studying, philosophizing, and eventually coaching on the answer to this mysterious question. His studies have taken him along multiple paths, including psychological and spiritual ones, which have culminated in his body of work that he calls sustainable high-level productivity, which he describes in his work on YouTube, TikTok, and his blog. He currently operates out of Stratford, Ontario, where he serves one-on-one clients and small groups. Great to have you on the show, Brent.
It's good to be with you guys. It's, this was such a long time in the making, and it only heightened the anticipation. So it's wonderful. It's good to be here.
To start things off, can you tell us about your brain with all of the psychological studies that you've done? What have you learned about your brain, and when did you realize that your brain was perhaps different from other people's?
Yes. So as we were talking a little bit before the recording, I have what I'm pretty sure is undiagnosed ADHD. And I know this because as I've gone into my coaching practice, the bulk of the clients that I would attract and who would eventually come to work with me would be people with ADHD. And they would know this because of the marketing that I put out, and I'd be working on questions that they've been working on. And whenever they describe their experiences, they would be describing my experience. There was a moment in my childhood where I was on the internet. This is like the dial-up days, and one family computer, and I found I'd only just heard of ADHD, and I brought it up with my parents. I was like, I think I may have this, and it had all these like kind of bullet points about how to detect it, ending with bad handwriting. My handwriting was very bad, and she considered it for a moment, my mom, and we spoke together about whether or not we were going to go for treatment about it. And in that moment, there was a decision to not do it, to actually go without the treatment for a little while and to see if we could carry on. And it stayed that way to this day. As a result, though, there were many challenges that I faced with that I did not see my friends and peers nearly as challenged with. Focusing on something for a long time, both on the micro level, so over the course of an hour, just like focusing on a single thing, and focusing on something over days, like seeing something all the way to completion. I had, and all the people I work with would also report having this big visionary quality where I would start something and get excited about it and be fascinated with it and want to dive deeply into it, and then having that happen with multiple things. And so this is a really exciting way to live because everything's interesting, everything's fascinating, and everything kind of appears like, oh my God, my whole life could unfold this way. But then one gets very quickly overwhelmed with, well, how do I choose? And then this a possibility of choosing became very difficult to handle with and caused a lot of opportunity overwhelm and paralysis. So this is one way that I discovered that my brain was different than for most people's.
Hmm. It sounds like you've developed strategies to deal with it. How did
Mhm.
you learn those strategies and what have been the most effective ones?
Yeah. A really important development for conquering that issue was discovering that basically all of these roads lead to the top of the same mountain, which in a lot of cases was the mountain of mastery, wanting to be really good at something, wanting to give myself completely to some area of study. And there are so many different ways, so many different things to give yourself to, like so many different philosophical studies, different, kind of skills like cooking or juggling or music or whatever. So realizing that it wasn't about trying to choose the right thing, which is what it really felt like at the time. It felt like, how do I choose the right thing at the expense of all of the wrong things? That was totally wrong. The realization was, I'm here to give myself to something. And it doesn't really matter what I give myself to as long as I give myself to it, because then I'm free to focus and I'm free to go deep, which is something I craved on a very deep level. And what I think a lot of people with ADHD, at least the ones who I've spoken to, that's what they crave as well. And then the best part is that through giving myself to something and the trust that it's safe to give myself to something, the trust, for example, that I'm not missing out on anything, which is what it constantly felt like, then in a way I realized nothing is being missed out on. That like, for example, I could develop some sort of skill or habit, and then that would lead to more opportunity down the road, and that opportunity is just as delicious as any other opportunity that was pestering me in the beginning. That was a very important insight.
Hmm. Yeah, that fear of missing out definitely has dominated my life in many ways. And what you're saying there makes a lot of sense. Is it something that clicked at a certain point, or has it been, I guess, that you've had realizations and then backslid and had realizations, or what has it been like for you?
It was a very slow realization. And it's funny because for anybody listening to this now, this is such a useful thing to know. Like at whatever age you're at, like to just avoid years of figuring out this one thing, that it's not about what you choose, it's that you do choose. For me, there was no one moment when I really learned it. It was more just a slow realization of it over time, that the more this became apparent to me and the more that I could trust it, the better everything got. And so it began this process of just moving into deeper and deeper levels of trust that I'm not missing out on anything and that I am free to give myself to whatever this is right here.
Yeah, amazing. Just to change tack a bit, Brent, how
Mm.
has your neurodivergence affected your financial life?
At least in the beginning, not very much. I came from a family that was somewhat uppity about money, to my great advantage, although it's, of course, disappointing in the moment when I want something right now and I can't get it always right now. But I learned to be very tight with money in a way that I was very covetous of it and somewhat even afraid of spending it. And I'm sure the extent to which I'm neurodivergent has influenced that. But where it has also influenced it, where is I would get very excited about investment opportunities, and my general enthusiasm about certain opportunities would often really light me up, and I might be more inclined to jump into them um, than is prudent. And it's not to say that it's like really, really super impulsive, but like a good example, right, is like crypto. Like when crypto was like, up and coming, I was right there. I was evangelizing with the best of them. I'm like, Bitcoin, you don't understand. It's decentralized. Like, it's so good. And I had a whole bunch, and then through, and I still have it now. Um, yeah, so that's how it affected finance.
Mm.
Did it ever go badly? Did you invest in anything that didn't turn out to be the way that it
I
seemed?
did. Yeah, I did. I did. I put a good chunk of money in a fund that is an ETF collection of companies that are dedicated to psychedelic research for healing, for the purpose of therapy and healing. And the ticker symbol is PSYK. And, this is the opposite of investment advice. It should go without saying, right? Yeah, I
Stay
know
Educational
away
it.
from this
entertainment
one.
purposes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But it's yeah, I bought a good amount of it, and it's not been doing very well. And I haven't sold it. I'm going to keep it. I have long-term faith in it, but it maybe would have been better to wait a little bit longer to see before jumping in.
Yeah, I've definitely done my fair share of emotionally investing, which brings us to the next question about emotional investment in relationships. Has there
Mm,
been anything that the way your brain works, has there been anything differently about the way you've approached relationships?
yes, in that I'm very quick to love people. And I don't see this necessarily as a bad thing because it's possible to love people and see the best in them and see the potential in them and to see what's good about them and to see what's innocent in them immediately. And that doesn't mean you have to make some sort of like bad mistake. Like you have to jump into a relationship. That's not a good idea. But it might be the coach in me. It might be how I've just come out of the factory. But whenever I talk to a person, I see them and I see that which they are in the process of becoming. I can't help but to. And so it makes me excited about most people that I get a chance to know.
Yeah, I can be a bit the same at times. And I guess it can be a very positive trait. And at times I can be a bit naive and end up
Mm.
not noticing perhaps signs that someone might not have my best intentions at heart. I notice sometimes when I'm with my wife that I'll have met someone and I'll say, "Oh, he seemed like a nice guy." And she's like, "I don't ever want to spend time with that person again. Did you notice that he had a gun in his pocket?" And he
Oh,
was
jeez.
not quite to that extreme, but there are little signs that I can sometimes miss. But I
Right,
think
right. I found a really important one is to keep in touch with my body at all times.
Mm, mm.
Like basically in all situations, but especially when meeting somebody, because it's kind of like when you invite a guest in and then your dog just like hates this person for some reason and you're like, hey, like,
Yeah.
stop, be polite, we have a guest in the home, but really then you find out later like the dog had a point. It's kind of like that where it's like, like the body always knows. And so if I feel like I should like this person, like I should, invite this person into my life and be close to them, like I feel obligation, but my whole body just doesn't want to do it. I've really put a lot of emphasis on trusting what the body says and
Mm,
guiding my decisions with people based on that. Is it the
mm.
same with you guys? Like in the case of this person you're talking about, like was your body saying one thing or the other?
Yeah, maybe. I tend to be a little bit out of touch with my body sensations, but
Yeah,
it's
fair
probably
enough.
a
Fair
good
enough.
thing for me to tune into.
Hmm, hmm.
Yeah, actually, I remember this is kind of the opposite, Brent. I'm not going to take it personally, but I stayed at this Airbnb, right? And the owner said, um, the dog there will become your best friend if you give it some pats. And we arrived there and the dog just wouldn't stop barking at us. And like I
Oh,
and
oh.
I wasn't game enough to try and pat it because but like I just walked close to it and the barking just became even more and more ferocious. So I guess you're talking about animals and dogs and stuff like that, knowing people. I wonder what it saw in me. I'll just blame it on my partner. Maybe it was my partner that set it off. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah,
It's just you're such an alpha male, Joey, that the dog felt threatened.
Yeah,
That's
maybe,
right. Yeah.
maybe. The dog's name was Jedi as well, so maybe it saw the dark side in me or something. Who knows? So Brent, what work projects are you currently concentrating on?
Yes, I am currently focused on raising my toddler into a young child. That's a big one. I am I am working with a roster of one-on-one clients, and going into January, I will be launching a group. I'm pausing. I don't know when this episode will be coming out, but January around that time, I'll be launching a group. It'll be my second group forum that will be dedicated to taking on 2024. And it's interesting because I've been putting my ear to the ground a little bit about 2024. I don't know about you guys. I really want to know what it's been like for you, but I have been feeling a distinct lack of enthusiasm about 2024. A lot of people, like when this new year comes up, it's like, all right, fuck, here we go. All right, let's get this over with, right? Are you finding that?
Oh, you go, Jess.
I feel a sense of trepidation, but also excitement. I think there's a lot of dynamics going around right now in terms of the rise of AI and the geopolitical conflict in the world that gives me some pause for hesitation, but there's also a lot of good things that are happening in my life. So I feel optimistic personally, but I feel worried about the future of humanity.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure if it's just because I've bullied some people into my way of thinking. Because like I guess when it comes to New Year's resolutions and stuff, I tend to be a bit skeptical or maybe even cynical about them. So I've been like people around me, I tend to encourage them to not set goals, not to wait for the new year, but basically to just say, hey, if it's important to you, take action today, take action tomorrow. Not tomorrow, like
Nice.
just take action. Like don't wait for the start of the year. And so
Right.
I feel like I might have coerced the people around me into losing enthusiasm for the new year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think that's really wise. I think that's a very wise way of coming at it. Um, I'm a sucker for New Year's resolutions. Like
Yeah,
I
fair
love the
enough.
wisdom. I love the wisdom of like, okay, it's December 29th. Let's go. Let's go right now. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's deep wisdom in that. I also like, the general sort of springboard into January 1st. Um, what I'm noticing though, as I'm speaking with people, is that like there's even less New Year's resolutions. It's less necessary to have a resolution where we're just hitting our heads against a wall and we're making something happen. And it's more about a willingness to take big, bold action,
Mm-hmm.
where for a lot of us, there's this one key decision that we can make that represents a movement outside of our comfort zone, and yet we feel called to it. It's what I've noticed in so many people. We just feel this call outside of the comfort zone into the unknown. Even being here, right? It's a little nervous getting on this, right? Like, I hope it goes well,
Mm-hmm.
this kind of thing. But just feeling called to be here and feeling a sense of like, yes, this is the correct thing to do. And whenever I do that, whenever one makes a decision that is not necessarily requiring a lot of effort, it's not like you have to try very hard or dig a big ditch or like put out a whole bunch of effort, but you just do that thing, then that actually creates a lot of power and velocity in one's life.
Mm-hmm.
And so it feels like 2024 is more about that than like trying to do something that's just not working.
Mm. Like that idea, being called to a grand purpose. What is your grand purpose outside work? I thought it was interesting you put raising your toddler as one of your work projects. Is it,
Yes.
I imagine it is a lot of work, but is there fun aspects to that as well?
Of course, yeah. It is it is quite an experience to watch she's a girl, watch my daughter become a person before my very eyes. It is
Mm.
shocking how fast it happens and how because I like before my daughter I had a cat and like cats like they max out right at a certain level after like a couple of years and they don't surprise you ever, but with her it's like a new thing all the time and getting bigger, and so there's that. And then besides that, what feels now to be my highest calling is to serve the evolution of humanity, which I appreciate sounds grandiose, but
That is a grand
this
purpose.
right, but like this discussion that we're having about answering the call out of our comfort zone into something bigger, newer, taking a step to play on a larger level. To me, whenever a human being does that, they signal to other human beings around that it's okay to do that. And not only that, but they offer more of their gifts, more unique gifts that are only possible for them to produce, that tends to be a benefit for humanity as well. And so it's like this like momentum that as it picks up and gains steam, to me, just from my money, for me alone, that is what I feel like will really help, what will really move the needle to make the world a safer place, for example.
Mm. Yeah,
So
that
I
does
feel
seem
very,
very.
I feel very strongly about that. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it's a important message because I think part of Australian culture tends to be that we don't like tall poppies, the crab in the bucket syndrome, that if someone starts following their call, then the crabs pull them down. And I think
Yes.
it's
Yes.
important that we like you said that we do show that it's okay to have big ambitions.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
there
Like, for
anything
example, you guys
you,
producing this podcast, it's so important. It's so important. It's so helpful. It's and like there was a moment when this podcast didn't exist, and instead there were other podcasts, and you had this moment of like, wait, like, are we going to insert our own thing into this world? And it feels weird at first. It's nerve-wracking. It's like, is it this, is it that? There's all these like, and then there's like this survival mechanism thing that will be like, no, like, somebody else has done it already, or this or that. And it's so important that you guys have done this.
I
Thank you.
think so too. Thanks for the recognition.
Yeah, yeah.
Going back to the other things that you enjoy doing, what are your other hobbies? Maybe it's a little bit limited at the moment with being a
Yes,
father.
yeah. Well, I love coaching. I love wisdom traditions, and really just the ongoing practice of enlightenment and awakening. So, using certain practices and principles to arrive at deeper and deeper, more grounded layers of peace, um, is something that I'm constantly doing. It's a very it's a hobby, you could call it. And also playing the piano. I am a musician, and I have a piano, and I like to play a lot of piano for myself and for my daughter.
Hmm, that sounds really fun. Is exercise part of your life at the moment?
Yes, I do my best to get to the gym 3 times a week. It usually ends up being two, and I try to get a run in there. Ken Wilber once offered this really interesting study, Ken Wilber being the father of the integral thinking framework. Have you guys ever dabbled in integral?
No. I,
No. Okay. Very cool stuff. And he cited a study where several people devoted themselves to meditation, like all day meditation for several weeks, and only meditated, and another control group meditated for half the time and worked out for the other half the time. And in that second group, those people, their meditations actually created better results, took them further along their path than those who were only meditating alone, and thus showing that an exercise practice really helps everything else along.
yeah, maybe Arnie was right. He was
Yeah,
saying he quit meditating and just did bicep curls instead. And he reckoned he was
right,
meditating while he was focusing on the guns. Maybe there's
right,
something
smart
to
guy.
that. What was the variable that they were measuring there in terms of the effectiveness of meditation?
I forget.
It's something around maybe, do you reckon it was using a headset and they were looking at the amount of theta waves, or it was more their personal
Yeah,
experience during it?
I've told you everything that I know about it. I can see if I can link it to you. Would you like that a little bit later? Maybe we
Yeah,
can
yeah,
include it in the notes. Okay, I'll see if I'll
yeah,
get
that
that
would
to
be
you.
wonderful. Because
Okay.
I do feel personally that running sometimes feels like a form of meditation for me, that it can be very hard for me to do seated meditation first thing in the morning. I feel like I need to move my body first. But the complement
Yes.
of first doing some yoga or first going for a run and then meditating, that feels like a winning combination to me.
Yes.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense as well, because I guess what I've been learning more and more recently is that the our brains actually evolved to move our bodies better. So like the body very much came first, and like the brains, the little brainstem, the lizard brain, and then we've got all the other things that are on top of it. So by basically looking after your body, you're signaling to your brain that, hey, you're not decaying. So let's improve all this other circuitry up here as well. So like this stuff can work better as well. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's a fascinating coordination, hey.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So in terms of your morning routine, Brent, what does that look like and how has that evolved?
Yes. There is not a morning routine.
That's all right.
There is, yeah, if I can do it, if I can really do it, I can get up at 6:30, then it means I can get up before Isabel wakes up, and then I can
Mhm.
meditate and do a few things. But sometimes she wakes up before that time, and sometimes I sleep in past that time. So there's no real morning routine.
Mm. Yeah, that's fair enough. And I guess with the stuff that you would put into your morning routine, I assume they're in there because they're important to you. Um do you have any kind of structure for maybe like catching up on that stuff maybe later in the day or something? Or like is there some kind of
Mhm.
resilience to it? By the way, it's completely okay if there's no resilience, because I imagine
Yes. Yeah.
I from what I hear from a lot of my friends with parents is like you have a kid, it's chaos. So don't bother with organization.
Right, right, yeah. Um, if I find a time to meditate, then I will. If it doesn't happen by the end of the morning, then it's usually not going to happen at all.
Mm, mm, mm,
Um, there is no routine like that. If there was, so say maybe a few years down the road when she's going to school and things are a little bit more consistent, then it would look something like getting up, meditating, exercise, shower, coffee, hit the thing. Maybe some
mm,
automatic writing, some
mm.
journaling perhaps, and then getting right into the work. That was my routine before, and I loved it. I loved it, and I'm looking forward to being able to do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really good. And interesting about the catching up, that there, I think that's important, that there are days where things just go haywire, and being able to
Yeah.
still fit some meditation in seems important. And you strike
Mhm.
me just in your demeanor that you seem very calm and almost zen like. Is there something that you do to find moments of mindfulness throughout the day?
Yeah, I've really made the mindfulness piece. Thank you for the compliment, by the way. That's very nice.
Yeah, I mean,
I've made that into really the front priority, and you know, for many spiritual aspirants, the meditation practice, the mindfulness practice begins, when when you have a meditation practice in the morning. So like it begins on the cushion, then ends when you're off and you go into your day. But then over time, the idea is to allow mindfulness to be present in every moment of the day. And what that also includes is all of the in-between moments, the stuff that we wouldn't think about when we're going from one room to the next, when we're getting in the car, when we're interacting with somebody, when we're doing some element of our work that we don't necessarily enjoy. And so over the last few years, I've been practicing bringing mindfulness to all of these moments. And when I say mindfulness, I'm just simply referring to being here with it, being here right now, and not having some part of my attention trying to fast forward through to the next thing. So the goal is to never have an element of my life that I'm just trying to get through so that I can get to the next thing. And this can be really challenging because like if we have like this big, intense, busy day, And all we want to do is just like get home and put on our pajamas and open up either a video game or a show or something. And there's this feeling of like, once I'm in front of my screen, once I'm in front of my laptop, then I'm going to be okay. And I feel that way too sometimes. But to remember consciousness, the consciousness that's underneath the personality which wants to rush somewhere, when we remember, then it brings this very interesting sense of blessing into this moment. It makes the moment into something that's just as gratifying as being in front of the screen. And that's such a satisfying thing to do. It's so, chef's kiss, so satisfying that it really makes the practice take on a momentum of its own.
Mm. It sounds like that's almost a productivity tactic when you were talking about being mindful during tasks that are not particularly engaging. Is that one of the things that you do when you have to do your tax return, for example? Feel
I'm
blessed that you get to
so
pay taxes.
yes, man, I'm so grateful that you asked. So it's funny because like the whole thing coaching, it started off as productivity coach. And the productivity coaching for me, it began because I'm like, how do I get myself to work? How do I get myself to do this thing? As was in the bio there. And then I realized that what's missing is flow state. Flow state is what occurs when we bring ourselves, we bring our presence, we bring our attention to whatever it is we're doing to allow this activity to become a flow state activity. And the first thing that's going to have to go out the window is this idea that there are some tasks with which we can have flow and others that we can't. This is a wrong idea. This is a false idea with, you know, I've never run into an exception. I'm open to it, but I've never run into an exception. And so therefore, if we approach a task that we otherwise just, like, I can't believe I have to do this task again. I hate this task. It's so annoying. It's so tedious. It's so slow. When we have a willingness to find flow with that activity, then that activity becomes an expression of our artistry. It becomes an expression of our mastery. And then it can just be another way to add beauty to our lives. Can I share a technique on how to do that?
Yeah, I'd love that. I have to fill out a form that I've been thinking in my head as being very tedious. So let's see if I can use what you're about to say to help me do this form.
Nice. Nice, nice. Okay. All right. Okay. So when it comes to like tedium, when it comes to stuff that is slow going, it's like molasses trying to get through it. Or if it's like difficult, like there's all these unknowns and I don't know how to do it or whatever. So look at that as compressed ease, which simply means that the mistake that we're making is that we're coming at it too fast. Like we have this expectation that it's supposed to be going faster than it should, but that expectation is our problem. It's not reality's mistake. And so what that means is if it's going to take as long as it's going to take, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to slow down and allow this task to take time. And not only that, but I'm going to allow this task to take as much time as it's going to take, which any sensible ego would go nuts hearing that. It's like, no, I don't want this to take time. I want this to be over with.
Yeah.
But when we do that, and it's such an expression of sanity, right? Like what the hell else are we going to do? It's nothing's going to make it go any faster than it's going to go. So when we slow down to meet it and allow it to take time, and then we just do the first thing and then the second thing, then what we're doing is we're meeting it where it is. It's almost like a bus that slows down at a bus stop so that a person can get on, so that the bus can speed up, which it does. Trust. The bus speeds up. And then the whole thing gets faster, but now we're on the bus. Now we're in flow with the activity because now we know what we're doing. And then
Love it.
we know it on a native level, and then it becomes an expression of our artistry.
I love it. So filling out my ASIC form is my form of artistry for this weekend.
That's right.
Get on the
That's
creative
right.
bus, Jess.
Yeah.
Now, buses have to take stops and the drivers have to take breaks. We're going to take a quick break now.
Nice.
Hi there, Focus and Chillers. Are you ready to supercharge your knowledge in the realms of creativity, tech, and psychology? Come check out my fortnightly newsletter. In each edition, you'll get quick wins and actionable takeaways that you can put into practice right away. If this sounds like you, I'd love to have you as a reader. Subscribe for your fortnightly dose of insights. The link is in the show notes. And now, let's get back to the show. All right. So Brent, what is one habit you have removed from your life?
Like a bad one?
Yes, sorry. I should have said bad habit.
Removing a good one.
Please remove some good habits.
Right.
Yes, well, what is
Yeah.
what is one bad habit you've removed from your life?
Yeah. Smoking cigarettes, drinking has come down considerably. And I'm at this threshold of just removing it entirely. And I'm like, it feels like, am I ready for it? But like, for the time being, just minimal drinking. Um,
Was there anything that
I
helped particularly with stopping smoking? Because that's a pretty big habit.
yeah. I used a process that is a little radical, and I've spoken about it in some of like my YouTube stuff. And whenever I do it, I try to put the whole thing. I try to, what would I say, like envelop it in caveats and warnings and like go at your own risk, this kind of thing. Because I had tried for a long time to quit, and for the record, it was never like full on like pack a day style smoking. It was always just like kind of maybe like one every other day or when I'm drinking or something. And I would just like quit. I would go through seasons of quitting and getting back on it and quitting and getting back on. And I had this idea where, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop fighting with myself and I'm just going to smoke on purpose. And I'm going to, because I already know it's bad. I already know I'm not supposed to do it. I already know it's bad for my health. I know I shouldn't. All this stuff, all that's there. So I don't need to debate with myself or like lecture myself or talk down to myself anymore. Like I know the problem that I have on my hands. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to fucking go at these cigarettes um until something happens. And so I did. So I smoked, but for the first time in my life, I smoked congruently. Like in that, like I was not accusing myself of doing something wrong. I just gave myself over to it. And I did that, and that went on for 4 days. So I just smoked all the way through. And then I got to the fourth day where I was like literally trying to continue to smoke and I couldn't anymore. It was just too gross, and the grossness was more powerful than the addictive nicotine quality of it. And so I couldn't bring myself to do it anymore. And I stopped mid cigarette. And what was very interesting about it was that I never made a decision, okay, now I'm going to quit. Like the door is just as open today as it was back then, but the effect is still the same, that now that it's not taboo, now that I don't have a weird complex about it where like I'm trying to prevent myself from doing it, like, oh, the attraction's so strong but I shouldn't, and I make it into this forbidden pleasure, that like, that I dream about one day. It's like all that drama has been erased, and it's only just what it is, which is just kind of a filthy gross little thing. And so the desire just seemed to completely go with that.
Hmm. It's a really
Does that
interesting approach.
explanation make sense? It's
Yeah,
strange, right? But
it does. Switch gears to your sleep. Do you have any sleep issues, and how do you switch off at night?
I do not have any sleep issues. I sleep very well. I
That's
apologize
great.
if that is disappointing.
No, I'm happy for you.
I mean,
I
surely you had a bad dream recently or something, right? Give
yeah,
us something,
yeah,
Brent.
sure, yeah.
Give us some
Yes, of
suffering.
course, of course. Yeah, I know. I'll find some suffering.
But what
I will
about
say
like
this.
with your toddler? Does
Oh
she
yeah,
sleep well
well,
now?
there's that. Yeah. That goes on. That happens. She wakes us up sometimes. I will say this though. I will say that I've worked with some people on the issue of sleep, and it's a very, very individual thing to individual people. And for a lot of people, sleep can be difficult because the mind is firing off. But there's this one theme that does seem to continue, which is that when the mind is firing off all the time, it's doing that because it believes that it needs to compute information and do stuff to stay in control and prevent bad things from happening and figure things out and be on top of things. And it feels naked and vulnerable if it's not doing these things. And so for a lot of people, and more or less for myself, doubling down on the trust, this deep, deep trust that there's truly nothing to think about right now, and anchoring that in as a foundational belief, that helps cultivate more trust that it is indeed safe to sleep. And that can sometimes help.
That makes a lot of sense. Just reassuring yourself. I find I have to write things down, otherwise I don't trust. But I
Right.
guess there's, after I've written it down, just reminding myself, okay, I don't have to take action on it right now. I can trust that my tomorrow self will take care of that.
Right, right. And the mind says like, yeah, but maybe just write down one more thing just to be sure, or maybe put a little thing in your phone, a reminder or something, and it'll just keep like, what if you miss this? What if you forget? What if you don't, what if? And the mind, when it's like when it knows that it can pester a person that way, it's just going to keep doing it like the way a child does. And that
Mm,
and that's why there's like this really radical and slightly irrational decision is made of like, truly I am safe without thought. Like
mm,
anything, like I'm making a decision now that whatever my mind says to me that would keep me awake is false. And then it's very nerve-wracking in that moment, but then on the other side of it, it's like, okay. And then the best part is that we don't have to tell the mind to shut the hell up. The mind is invited to just keep going ahead and saying whatever it's going to say, because we don't have to be pestered by it.
we'll have to try it.
Yeah, me too.
Mhm.
Me too.
Nice.
So Brent, do you have any resources like books, philosophies, apps, or sensory toys that you find most helpful for dealing with your brain?
Yes. I have three books, like for any listeners who would be interested in cultivating this sort of trust theme that has come through this conversation, as well as the mindfulness piece. There are, what would I say? The first one that comes to mind is Falling into Grace by Adi Ashanti. The second one would be the classic, the evergreen classic, The Power of Now. Have you guys read it ever? Nice.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I
Haven't.
read A New Earth, I think. I didn't read The Proud Now, which is his second book, I think, which is yeah.
Mhm.
I tried listening to an audiobook version and I fell asleep. I haven't
Yeah.
gone back to it.
That would make
Well,
sense. That would make sense because it's like it's so relaxing. It's so peaceful that the
yeah.
mind, the mind just like like it just collapses. So those two, and then maybe to give it three, a book by Matt Kahn. He has four out. They're all wonderful, but I would absolutely recommend The Universe Always Has a Plan.
That definitely seems to align with the trust side of things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Where's the best place for people to connect with you?
You can send me an email. My email address is hello@brenthuras.com, BRENTHURAS. And I am perhaps the most active now on TikTok. So I'm uploading a lot of content there. So you can check me out for 2, 3, 4 minute videos on areas around spiritual awakening and productivity and flow, sustainable high level productivity. And I have a really nice resource of videos on my YouTube channel, especially my more recent, say 20 or 30 videos. I definitely recommend checking them out. They explain, they go like a lot of stuff that we spoke about here. We can go really deeply into those in the videos.
Well, thank you, Brent. It's been wonderful having you on. Do you have any final words or asks of our audience?
It has been a pleasure talking with you guys. And again, I'm so grateful for this opportunity and to talk with you. So thank you very much. Very nice privilege. Last words to the audience. Yes, practice trust and practice what I'm now considering to be radical self-trust, which is as you go through your life, notice where your psychology is telling you that you're missing something or doing something wrong, especially when it comes to making decisions, especially when it comes to creating your art. And ask, what would it be like if I could just trust that I know what I'm doing? To give to yourself this gift of, I know what I'm doing. If it feels like relief, if it feels centering and grounding, then consider giving that to yourself so that the conflict in you can dissolve and you can just be facing in one direction. I know what I'm doing, because you do.
Wonderful. We'll wrap the show with that.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Focus and Chill podcast. To listen to other episodes, jump onto podcast.focusbear.io. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, or you know someone who'd be a good fit, email us at team@focusbear.io. Otherwise, stay focused, stay chilled, and peace out.